based on the ILO and Indonesia University survey 2015, there are 0.2 million local domestic workers in Indonesia, with 84% there are women. And we estimate that in 2020, there are 5 million local Indonesia domestic workers. The main issue of domestic worker in Indonesia, the domestic worker are categorized as worker. They always be categorized as informal, unpaid worker sector. So no mandatory to fulfill the rights of domestic worker. No protection for their rights as worker, also human being, citizen, women, and also no implementation of child worker elimination. The domestic worker have no access to claim their rights and standard setting. So the domestic worker work in the undecent situation like unlimited working hours, unlimited job description, no minimum wage, no social security protection, no contractor, no 1 day off, and the situation depends on the employer. The domestic worker also face the lack of the freedom of association and move. And also the domestic worker vulnerable to any violence and modern slavery. We submit the domestic workers signed 2004. The domestic worker law has been proposed signed 2004 to the parliament. And the domestic worker law was included in the national legislation program every 5 years term of the parliament period. In the term period 2009 until 2014, the domestic worker law was included in annual priority of the parliament legislation program from 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. 2010 until 2011, the Parliament, through the Commission 9, conducted research in 10 cities in Indonesia. And then 2012, the Commission 9 conducted a public test in the 3 cities. And then same year, the 2012, the Parliament conducted comparative study to South Africa and Argentina for the domestic worker law. And then 2013, the Commission 9 submit the domestic worker law draft to the legislative body of the parliament. But in the 2014, the legislative body refused to continue deliberation and stopped the law deliberation. In the period 2014 until 2019, the domestic worker law just in the waiting list of the legislation program of 5 years. But the parliament hasn't deliberate again the law. Period 2019 until 2024. First, in 2020, the parliament put again the domestic worker in legislation program and put as part of the 2020 annual priorities. And then the House of Representative legislation body has decided on July 2020 to initiate the domestic worker again, domestic worker protection after more than a decade of the back and forth deliberation. But until now, we face the problem because the plenary of parliament hasn't decided the domestic worker law as the initiative of the parliament to deliberate together with the government. The crucial issue that emerged in the deliberation there are about minimum wage and the demanding on employer protection, family term, sanction, and dispute settlement mechanism. That's the majority of the member of the parliament still worry about the law because the in other side the majority of the parliament are also the employer, so they worry for the change of they get privilege during their relation with the domestic worker. So it's very, very difficult that the member of the parliament has class bias, gender bias, feudalism. So they refuse the domestic worker law. The situation describes the contradiction of the Indonesia government and parliament, that Indonesia there is the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, with the principle of the no one is life which implies that no one is left behind. However, so far, 4.2 million were domestic workers left under construction of the SDGs. The goal, especially in the goal of concerning decent work. It is important for domestic workers to get recognition, protection, and welfare as worker and citizen. And also for the social justice for all Indonesia people, including the domestic worker. The situation also relates to the domestic worker situation during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the COVID-19 case in 2020, the Indonesia government decided the social physical distancing policies as like work from home, school from home. But the police of the work from home cannot be possible for the 4.2 million the domestic worker. They have no chance on working from home. For the domestic worker with lowest income are in very difficult situation and vulnerable situation. They have no choice and access for all of the kind of the social protection. Domestic workers face the vulnerable situation to COVID-19 infected and like to access the protection equipment. And then second, domestic workers face the increasing work demands, extra work in family, and also work household. Domestic workers also face lost work and wages. Based on the Jala PRT rapid assessment, there are more than 45% domestic workers are fired by the employer without severance and social protection. The all situation because the domestic worker be excluded of social security and also no recognition as worker because the domestic worker until now has no law, no protection. Based on Jala domestic worker survey in December 2020, there are 82% not domestic workers have no access for health and social security. Almost 100% domestic workers have no access for employment social security. During the pandemic, the government doesn't put the domestic worker as part of citizen and worker that are covered by the social protection. The situation of domestic worker with income 20 until 30% of the minimum wage without social protection security illustrate how the state has become an agent of violence, exploitation, and modern slavery by neglecting and enforcement the domestic worker as worker and citizen.